Hi everybody, I am Devika Mehta Kadam. I am a dance movement psychotherapist who works with the neurodiverse population. I've worked in India, I've worked in UK, but some of the things that we are going to look at today is what is first dance movement therapy? How does it help with neurodiversity? What can it help with? Right, and we might look at some of the things that some of the techniques that are employed in movement therapy to help those who are on the neurodivergent who identify themselves as neurodivergent, but also to work with parents, with caregivers, with caretakers of those within of those who are part of the neurodivergent family. So let's start off with what is dance movement therapy, right? Dance movement therapy, essentially what it does is it uses dance or movement, as we like to call it, from an individual's perspective to help with physical, social, emotional, cognitive integration, right? And a lot of times some of the questions that we get is dance movement therapy will work with our child because the child is primarily non-verbal. That is one of the myths that we look at, because dance therapy can work with anybody, right? It's not just for those who have difficulty with language or have difficulty with the spoken word. So dance therapy, essentially, what does a session look like when we look at dance therapy, right? One of the ways that we look at in the sessions is we start off with a warm-up, and then the warm-up gives us information of where is the child at, where is the young adult at, how are we essentially looking at this conversation where do we start off with, right? And one of the beautiful things about movement therapy is that we really come and meet the client at the level that they are at, right? So there'll be, like we know, when we work with the neurodivergent population, every day is different, every moment is different, right? So we start off with where the client is at. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's highly energetic, sometimes the child comes in or the young adult comes in extremely distressed. So you meet them where they are at through their bodies and through the words that we speak. So that's what happens in the warm-up. We then go into process where whatever information we've got in the warm-up, we then look at a therapeutic goal, or we look at so the therapeutic goal can be in any domain. It can be in the physical domain, it can be in the social domain, it can be in the emotional domain, it can be just about a cognitive domain like attention, or how do I work with impulse control, if we are looking at an emotional domain, we are looking at how do I regulate myself, right? If we are looking at a physical domain, it's about how do I release this energy, or the things that I'm feeling, how do I push it out of my body, or how do I express it through my body. So one of the things that we are really focused on in the session is, what does the client need, what does the child need, if we are working in a group, what does the group need, or if it's a young adult, what does this young adult need, right? When we do that, when we are starting off and when we base the process from a client perspective, from where the individual is at, we call it person-centered, right? The individual becomes the primary person who helps us guide where they want to take the session. And that is the beauty about creative arts therapies, because what dance therapy then permits or allows for in this space is, one, it doesn't feel like a class, right? It doesn't feel like there are expectations that are set from the neurodivergent child or adult to do things in a specific way. Secondly, it creates a very non-judgmental space where the person then has the space to do what they want to do. And the reason why I'm constantly saying person and I'm not saying the word patient is because, yes, even though this is the therapy, it is still a brave space for the neurodivergent young adult or child to show up, right? If we are looking at an emotional domain, we would look at, what is this person feeling? If they are extremely overwhelmed by what they are receiving from the environment, how do we work through that, right? We can offer sensory spaces to work with. So really looking at how dance therapy can work through all the domains and then really integrate it so that the young adult or the child or the client or the neurodivergent individual in front of us has the opportunity to create resources from themselves, because they understand themselves the best, right? So movement then becomes the bridge. It becomes the bridge of expression between the therapist or the facilitator and the client or the group that we are working with. One of the things that, so I've worked in school setups, in inclusive school setups. I have worked in occupational therapy centers. I've worked in centers where we work as a multidisciplinary team. I've done festivals that are for the neurodivergent population, right? And one thing that I have really realized is what happens with movement is that it allows us to connect at a level where I am not expected to constantly understand my cues, translate those cues, and put it into the words that the therapist understands or that the person opposite me understands. So if I'm a neurodivergent person, I'm a neurodivergent individual, it becomes much easier for me to just be, right? And that is one of the most important ways to start off in a very non-directive approach, where we're just being with the group, being with the child, to sort of say that I'm here, right? I'm with you, I'm here for you. And we start off with that idea that we are here together in this space and I will follow your lead. And this sets it apart from other conventional therapies in the sense that I do understand that a lot of you all do go for speech therapy or occupational therapy, and there are very specific goals and a specific way that that is done, right? What dance therapy offers to me as a therapist is this huge space of how I want to work with the child, right? So I may bring in a sensory blanket, which is taken a little bit from the occupational therapy setup. And I may say that, okay, let's ground yourself. Let's feel safe before we can start working on any of the other emotional goals, any of the other cognitive goals that are being looked at. Another myth about dance therapy is that the child has to be extremely mobile or the young adult has to be physically fit and physically ready to move. That is essentially a myth, because some of the neurodivergent populations, they do have multiple difficulties, right? It might be, I had one child who had autism with an amputated leg and one side of the body not functioning as well as the other side of the body. So, but you can still do dance movement therapy with them. You can still use movement as a way to understand their world, as a way to communicate and express in ways that they understand us and we understand them, right? So, one, you don't have to be a dancer. Two, you don't have to be physically fit or you don't have to be fairly mobile to be able to access movement as therapy. The third myth that we often encounter in the questions that parents pose to us or caregivers pose to us is this works. Dance therapy will only work in social settings, and it will only work in group setups, but it can work both ways, right? So I do see individual clients who are also on the spectrum. I also see them in a group. Sometimes I see kids in mixed groups. So I'll have somebody from the Williams syndrome, somebody who's been diagnosed with ADHD, two children who have cerebral palsy, one child who has Downs, and an autistic child all together. And what we really feel is that the more inclusive the space is, the more skills the child develops, right? And when we say skill development, what we are expecting is this neurodivergent individual has to match up to what the majority of the world is asking for, right? A lot of times I struggle with this idea that one child who's already having major troubles, major challenges, has to constantly pull themselves up to meet people, right? Meet the majority, or the global expectation is that you come up and you should be able to say hi, you should be able to have eye contact. But I have so many children who will say hi in absolutely beautiful ways, one of the child will come and, like our way of saying hello is just, he'll bring his head closer and I'll bring my head closer, and we'll meet just at a head level. And that's all that we need to know, that yes, I'm here, I know I'm with you in DMT, in dance movement therapy session, and yes, I see you, right? A lot of it is about, how do I see you? Am I being seen in therapy? And that, I feel, is a very big USP of using creative arts, of using dance, using art, using music, using rhythms in therapy, right? So very important to understand this idea that dance therapy can go from being very directive, very structured, to being very non-directive. It can go from working with individuals, but it can also happen with groups. And sometimes we shift, right? If a person is doing beautifully in individual sessions, we say, okay, why don't we see if group sessions offer you more? Or if they're really struggling in group sessions, we can say, hey, maybe this is not a safe space for you right now. Can we probably meet in a more individual setup, right? So something to really think about is, as a therapist, right? If I'm using movement, 1, it bridges. 2, it offers a range of options or resources for the neurodivergent adult or child to learn how to express themselves, how to best express themselves, right? It may not necessarily be the goals that the neurotypicals want them to have, but they definitely find their own unique way of communication. They find resources within the movement repertoires, within the way they express themselves using their body. They feel more comfortable in their bodies when we are looking at dance and movement therapy as a primary treatment form, right? Also, one of the things that often gets told to dance therapy is that this is an alternative treatment. This is a complementary treatment, right? So you still have to do your physio, you still have to do your OT, you still have to go for your speech, you still have to do your special education, and dance therapy can be one of those things that you do. What we've realized is that dance therapy really supports this conversation, right? This space where a neurodivergent individual can come in and talk and express and sense and feel, right? So very important to understand that, 1, it is not just a space where goals are constantly met, right? It is a space where the person can be, can explore, can become aware, can start identifying, and therefore develop their own agency to work through these areas, right? In no way do we say that the therapist then becomes the expert of what this child feels. The therapist becomes the expert of what this child needs. The child decides what they need, right? They can express it through their emotions and their movements. They can express it through using their bodies in ways that they wish to communicate, and they're always the intention of the therapist is to see them, right? Is to witness them and then take therapy from there. So what does then a session look like? So we talked about a warm-up, we talked about doing this process where we take information from the warm-up and then meet the child or the individual where they are at and take it forward from there. And then we go into a cool down, and then the process gets repeated every other session. Yes, we do have broader goals that we are hoping to achieve, but we also really are a person-centered space for a neurodivergent individual or a group. Now, what does really happen in a dance session, right? Is there music? Is there movement? We use a variety of props to work with sensory difficulties of a child or an individual. One of the very beautiful techniques, which I also encourage a lot of parents to use, is mirroring, right? So mirroring is, if the child hands goes up, you're not just literally copying the child, but you're really trying to feel, what is this individual feeling? What is this individual trying to communicate? And you get this information from your own body. So if a child does this, as a therapist, I will try and embody it with the same kind of empathetic space by attuning into where the client is at. And what mirroring then does is it creates empathy, it creates bridge, it offers me as a therapist an insight into what my client is feeling, what my client is responding to, and then that helps also the client to say, hey, my therapist understands what I'm feeling, or my therapist can see me and is acknowledging or accepting me just as I am, and therefore I can now show all the different sides of me through my body and through moving in space, right? So we do mirroring a lot. What mirroring also does is there are mirror neurons in the brain, right? And what these mirror neurons do is, if I'm moving a specific part of my body, then the other individual who's moving their body can also sense and feel, and the same parts in the brain get activated of what I'm witnessing, right? So even if I'm moving and the person opposite me is not moving, but they are witnessing me very actively, 60 to 70% of the same areas in their brain will light up or will get activated when they are engaging in this active witnessing, right? Another beautiful thing which I really enjoy as a therapist in a DMT session is this capacity or this potential that we can really see in a neurodivergent individual, right? Because there's no expectation to tell me what you want. There is no expectation to show me or do this or do it in this format or do it in that format. It is really more of a companionship that gets built. There's a lot of play, there is energy, there is space to relax and just lie down flat on the floor and use ground as a way to support our bodies and to support the sensations that may overwhelm us. Now, one of the other things that we do get is this conversation about my child is stimming, or my child is doing this, or or I'm not feeling in control of my emotions. How do I work with that, right? What we generally do in movement therapy is we don't take away a resource before making sure that there is a bunch of resources that that individual can access. So one of the examples that I would give is, I had one client who was 3.5 years old, and he had this need to put his head just between the thighs, just, you just come and put his head there to feel the pressure and to feel that kind of holding. What we started doing is we started imitating that using pillows. You started imitating that in ways that then allow the child to access what the child needs or what the client needs to use the same. So I'm going to show you what pillow we started using for that client. It's a pregnancy pillow, but it has sort of the similar shape of, having the child access that. So we just allow the child to enter the room, and that's the first place that child would go, feel held, feel connected, and when the child was ready, he'd come back. If there was anything in the session that overwhelmed the child and the child needed that pressure again would go, and he would put his head there, and the therapist, that is me, would help him provide that support, right? So what we essentially do is we don't take away the movement that is helping the child to survive, to thrive, right? But we offer a whole range of different movements that can then help the child or the neurodivergent adult to work through things. Another way of connection is really moving with the child. So if the child is walking fast, we walk fast with them. If the child sits in one corner, we find a way where we are not on top of them, not like helicoptering them, but sort of in a way that the child knows that we are with them. If they need to rock, we find different momentums to rock. We find different ways to rock. And I know that a lot of parents do find these difficult in terms of what if the child does this everywhere, right? Whatever you're doing in therapy, and if it's working for them, do they need to do this everywhere else? What I would like to say is neurodivergent individuals are very intelligent. They know exactly what is okay within what space, provided that space provides it consistently. So what I've realized as a therapist when I'm working with the neurodivergent individuals through movement is that there has to be consistency. If the child needs something and I provide it every single time consistently, a secure attachment is formed, where the child then feels and knows that, okay, I don't need to do this every time, but if ever I need it, my therapist will be able to provide it for me. So consistency, authenticity, honesty, a very boundaried communication where I don't go out of my way to accommodate a child, right? I will let the child know that this is how much I can do for you. Let's work within this area. And what then happens is that the child also, or the neurodivergent individual also starts modeling that. They start to model boundaries outside the therapy sessions, right? So those are some of the things: mirroring, using props, using ways to help them build resources in their space, right? Another thing that I would like to bring to your attention is that in my work with young adults, in my work with, when we are looking at this idea of a lot of parents who come to me, they say, I've done this work, my child has been in therapy for 10 years, 11 years, and especially those on the spectrum, they start quite young when it comes to any kind of therapeutic intervention. They're almost over-therapized by the time they reach adulthood. And then suddenly, there is no therapy that's happening, right? What dance therapy then essentially provides in those spaces is the individuals constantly changing, they're constantly adapting, they have not stopped growing, right? So how do we then accommodate that even as grown adults? So a lot of the work that I do, and I absolutely love that work. As much as I love working with children, I really love working with young adults because they have so much to offer. We talk about how the body responds. There is, I do know that a lot of parents do struggle with any kind of any kind of bodily difficulties, like say for example, if because as the child hits puberty, there are certain sexual developments, there are developments of desire, there are developments of attraction, which the child is not able to always articulate but does express, right? And it starts off from the age of around 12 to 13. So when they reach young adulthood, there are so many things that developmentally at that age, even if the mind and the body and the words are not all integrated, but those desires are still there. They still want to be with peers. They want to communicate with people who are of their age. So we find different ways, and the beauty of arts is that arts has its own language, right? Movement has its own way of showing to a child how can they cope, how can they adapt. In fact, I have about 5 to 6 current clients who have they make reels, and they really use movement and social media now to find ways to express themselves, right? There was one time in between when there was this one of my other clients that I was working with really enjoyed beatboxing and hip-hop lyrics, and he would not be very good at speaking, but he would be able to rap, right? Because rap provides a certain rhythm, right? And his body would use that rhythm for him to be able to articulate what he's seeing, what he's feeling, and how he wants to express it. So what movement therapy then offers is this whole burst of what we call a play space. A play space where their creativity is valued, a play space where they find ways to express themselves in the way they want to express themselves, a space where they learn how to improvise, right? They learn how to listen to what their body needs, listen to what their emotions need, and find ways of expression. It offers a play space where they can come in, do things, understand how it impacts them, and then take their own time to process it. And this is something that I find very valuable, not just as a neurodivergent individual myself, but just as an individual, to have that one committed, consistent space where I can go and I can just be, and I may not necessarily have to always put everything in words or in ways that somebody else understands. So movement therapy helps with physical domains, with emotional areas, with social areas, with cognitive areas. Therapy can last anywhere from a few sessions to a year. I have some individuals who I've seen across 4 to 5 years, and I've literally had, by the time it's time to leave them, movement and music and rhythm is a part of who they are. It's a part of their being. I had one child who actually told me we should have a festival like a Mela fair, and we should have a DMT stall, and you tell everybody about DMT and I will show them how DMT has helped me. And for a child with autism to have to come in and articulate this in such a beautiful way and say that if you need somebody to talk about DMT, I would want to be that person. I will dance and show, I will move and show. So it's something to really think about, is that DMT doesn't stop with a developmental age, right? We work right across till they are 30, 35, 40, because the needs of the individual are constantly changing. They don't stop being neurodivergent after a certain age, right? So they do need that support. They need somebody who can have trust in their play space. So something to really think about is, one, if your bodies don't leave you when you grow up, or movement doesn't leave you when you grow up, how can we really use the body and the movement to sustain us through our lifespan, to provide the resources that we need in our lifespan? Really just understanding that it has nothing to do with only social skills or only physical skills or only emotional areas. And I do know that, I really empathize with the caregivers and with the parents who say that you don't understand what it is to live 24/7 with a neurodivergent individual, and what that experience can feel like. But the more you use mirror, the more you use gestures and movement as a way of expression, as a way of communication, it really offers a very different insight into your child's experience and into your young adult's experience. We do work a lot I work a lot with parents as well. One, just also for the caregivers of the neurodivergent families to have their own space to express, right? Because so many times it becomes about the needs of the neurodivergent individuals. Okay, so very quickly, there is a question. I would invite you that as and when we go, if there are questions that are coming to your mind, please put them in the chat. We do have a question where it says, how do we get a special need kid to mix with other kids in group activities to play music, dance, sports like soccer, cricket and basketball? So one is, I'm hoping that when you say other kids, they're either on this, they have an understanding into a child, what your child needs, or they are somewhere on the spectrum as well. What we are essentially looking at is looking at movement and dance as a way of therapy versus movement and dance as a hobby, right? I would say start off with a creative arts therapy. There are amazing music therapists, there are amazing dance movement therapists who will offer that space to your child, where the child first develops an instinct, right? Where the rhythm then becomes a part of them, where music, they get to pick and choose what kind of music do they like. I know some really beautiful young adults who love drumming, right? So they'll go for drum circles where they can feel the rhythm and the sensation and the vibrations. All of that is very grounding and centering for some of them. Please remember, each child is different, each individual is different. So what I'm offering here may not necessarily be a blanket idea that will work with every child, but offer them multiple ways and allow them to stay with that instrument for a few days, a few months, and let's see what sticks with that child, right? Or what sticks with that individual. And then introduce them slowly with maybe 2 people or 3 people of the same age group, and then push them out into a bigger space. Because a lot of it is about being comfortable with what am I also bringing to this group, right? Another thing that I have noticed with the neurodivergent population is that they may not always respond to dance and movement every time in the same way, right? So I may have a child who has come into the session and has loved it for 2 or 3 sessions, but then on the 4th session does not want to engage as much, and that also should be permissible, right? Because it is their space. Like all of us, right? We may love pav bhaji or we may love to cook, but there are days when we just don't want to cook, right? We may love movies, but there are some movies we just don't want to watch. So if those rules don't apply to us, that if we are doing something, we have to do it all the time, they shouldn't apply to the neurodiverse population as well, or the neurodiverse individuals as well. So really offering them space and seeing what is it that they like. Play cricket with them, play basketball with them, allow them to feel textures, see which ball would they like to use, what speed which they want to do. Repetition sometimes is a key. Like, instead of changing quickly, if you really offer repetitive simple movements with neurodiverse populations, really work, because it talks about consistency. There is a certain expectation, the anxiety that comes with not understanding multiple choices and multiple options really reduces. So what you are actually saying is, I'm going to offer you this purse and I want you to try and use it in different ways, and let's see if you would like to keep this purse with you. I'm using the purse as a metaphor for music or dance or sports activities. Skating, I know skating, open sea swimming. There are some beautiful children who I've had the privilege to work with, who are now in Special Olympics, and they are world-class skaters. So really, just I would say, keep it simple. Allow them to explore that one specific hobby as much as they want to, or as little as they want to, and they will eventually find what they click with. Yeah. If we have any more questions about what dance therapy can look like, or what really happens in sessions, please feel free to ask. And I'm going to wait for a second, because I know that sometimes it's hard to type and listen at the same time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them. So very quickly, before till maybe another question comes up, is one, for those of you who have joined us just now, is dance and movement therapy uses movement as a way of communication, questions, in a way of expression, when we are looking at physical, social, emotional, cognitive domains. But it is also a beautifully non-judgmental space. It is a person-centered or an individual-centered space. It can happen in individual sessions, it can happen in group. Yes, there is a formal assessment that happens, and we can monitor progress over a span. It can happen at any age group. It does not necessarily have to be when you are a young child. It can be across your lifespan. We also have one more question. Can we know in detail the sessions of dance therapy? Jennifer, can you please explain that question a little bit? Like, what are you looking for about the session? And then maybe I can shine a little bit light on it. So what we are going to do till then is a very tiny experiential for maybe 3 or 4 minutes that I've set up. Is we're going to use our own bodies, and we are going to see if it creates a shift in ourselves. And maybe that's how we will realize that if it can create a shift in our bodies in a span of 5 to 6 minutes, what kind of impact can it have long term, right? Yes, Jennifer. Okay, so how do the sessions go? It's very simple, honestly. It starts off with a warm-up where the client comes in and we meet the client and see where they are at. It can be either using the whole body as a warm-up, or it can be picking a music and creating specific movements so that they ground and they center to start the process work. It then goes into whatever information we get from that warm-up, and maybe from a parent or anything that has happened. We then move into creating a goal which may be session specific or which may be therapy specific across a lot of sessions, sort of like an umbrella goal which we start working on. There are two, like it's a continuum. The therapist can be very directive and tell the child, okay, let's start throwing the ball, and then let's make a bigger movement of it, right? Or it can be completely non-directive, and it can be, okay, so this is the floor, where in the room would you like to be today, and where would we start off with? And then we start off with wherever the child is at and however they are moving, and then we build on that, or we reduce or de-amplify that. And then we end with a cool down, or a way to say that, okay, now the session has ended and now we're expected to go back and go back out of this space into another space, or go back home. Yeah, so the sessions essentially are warm up, process work, and then we go into a cool down. So very quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite those of you all who are watching and are with me to sort of look at doing a very quick warm up of our body, and then maybe we'll do a very quick quid pro quo kind of a activity to see what happens in our bodies. Are there shifts that can happen, right? So let's start off with your fingers, and let's just quickly warm the fingers. You can either copy me, or you can do something different, but remember, you have to involve your fingers. Yeah, so really warm up your fingers, and then your wrist. And as you do your wrist, start expanding that movement into your elbows. Yeah, and seeing what happens with our elbows. And now using our shoulders and moving them as fast or as slowly as you wish to. And now coming from your shoulders to your neck. And just use your neck as little or as much as you want. So you can maybe move a little bit faster, a little bit slower. Now I want you to start tapping your face. You may massage it, you may tap it gently, and really start activating different parts of your face, and bring that down into your neck and your shoulders. Yeah, now that you've done this and your upper, just this part of your body is warmed up, what I would invite you to do is imagine a ball. Imagine you're holding a ball. Yeah, and this ball is how you're felt today. Yeah, it may be you felt very happy today, you're very tired, whatever it is that you're feeling today, let's push it into a ball. Yeah, and you're starting to feel this ball. What is the size of a ball? Are you feeling small? Are you feeling medium? Do your emotions feel very big? And my emotions are no longer fitting in the screen, but are your emotions feeling big? So pick a size that feels very natural to you of how your emotions are feeling. Mine feel like this today. Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to start moving this ball of emotions, and we're going to see what we want to do with it. So say for example, it's an emotion that you really like, right? So if I'm feeling very rested today, so if I'm feeling very rested and excited for the weekend, I may want to make it bigger, right? So let's see if I can make this ball bigger and see how I can play with this ball. Yeah, if I have to pass this ball to somebody, I need a lot of effort. So if I really am too excited and somebody is not that excited, they might not be able to hold my ball, or they might not be able to catch that ball. And if maybe I'm not feeling that great, I might want to make that emotion probably smaller. Or I want to make that very big and I want to really see what is happening. Right? So you choose. You get to choose how would you like to move this ball of emotion that you started with. You can make it small and play with it and make it light. Or you can make it big and feel very heavy. And now we bring back this emotion to the size that it was. make it very light, just light like a feather, and we let it go. Yeah, let's do this again. Make it light, and for those of you who feel still heavy in your body, let's let it go. And now just shake this off. Shake off any kind of residual emotion that you've had. You may have it in your hands, you may have it in your shoulders, you may have it in your neck. Yeah. So this is essentially a very small way of looking at it. We start off with a warm-up. We do a whole process. We play with it. Like the mind informs the body, the body changes things in the mind, right? The more we do of this, the more consistent, concrete form of expression eventually emerges. And then we also find ways to de-roll from this, and we make sure that the person feels held and contained to then go back into their space. So for those of you who were able to do this movement experience with us, is there anything that you'd like to share? I know we are in a public space and maybe sharing personal feelings might be a little bit harder. But if there's anything that you like to share of how you're feeling in the body, let us know. Yes, COVID has actually shifted. We do all have sessions for kids for the age group of 6 to 8 years old. We generally invite parents to be with us in those online spaces until and unless the child or the neurodiverse individual is independent and wants the space for themselves. 30 to 45 minutes is a max, because forget neurodiverse individuals. How many of us can sit in front of Zoom or in front of a Facebook session for more than 30 minutes? Very few of us. So we really look at smaller sessions and try to do as much as we can in the sessions, which are 30 to 45 minutes. So thank you for that question, Sagar Gandhi. And Jennifer, I hope I have answered your question, if you are still with us, Jennifer. But just to say that one, movement is how we stay alive, right? Movement is how we live, how we breathe. Don't take movement away from your child. Don't put the child into boxes. Don't put the neurodivergent individuals where you're telling them to not move in certain ways before offering them alternative views of or ways of moving. Your body is with you everywhere. So if we can develop movement and use the body as a resource, it really reduces the pressure on a lot of external ways of coping, of finding ways to regulate ourselves. Yes, it can be very scary to be so connected with your body, because all of us are disconnected robots. If somebody tells us if you could only work and leave your body on the side, a lot of us would do that, but we don't have that option. So the more connected we are with our bodies as individuals, as a neurodivergent population, as parents, as caregivers, the deeper and the more integrated eventually you will feel. Yes, what I will do is over here I will just type the website and where you can find us. So I'm just going to put the website in the chat so that it stays there. Or if you just Google dance therapy and put my name, you will come across the company or the organization that I run. So I've put that in as the website from Autism Connect. Yeah. And with that, like I said, most of us do not have more than 30 to 45 minutes capacity to stay in front of a screen. I would now end the live. Thank you so much for staying with me throughout. For those of you who are going to watch this later or eventually, please remember, movement is important. That's the takeaway. Movement is vital to how you live your life, and movement is a resource. Don't discount dance therapy as a complementary therapy, but really find ways to bring movement and dance back in your lives. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Autism Connect. And I hope that everyone here has benefited from this small conversation that we've had. Thank you so much. And with that, good evening, good morning to all the different people across the globe that are watching us. Thank you.